Hello, everyone. My name is Abby Kincannon, and I am one of the international admissions counselors at the University of Colorado Boulder. And I work with students who attend school in India. So I will be your admissions counselor, and I'll be sure on my very final slide to put up my contact information. That way you can get in touch with me. But today I will be talking a bit about the college essay and why it's important, some tips and tricks to writing the college essay, as well as just workshopping with you a bit about the CU Boulder writing supplement. After I talk a bit about the essay, there will be some time where if you do have specific questions about writing the college essay, you can put them in the Q&A box. Please, not the chat box, but the Q&A box, and then I will answer those questions. Then I will start talking a bit about the University of Colorado Boulder. After that section, once again, there will be time for you to ask questions about CU Boulder, as well as if you have questions about the admissions process at all, I would be more than happy to answer those questions. So I will go ahead and then just get started talking about the college essay. Okay, so as an admissions counselor, I read a lot of college essays. At CU Boulder, we require not only the essay that's in response to one of the Common Application writing prompts, since we are a Common App school, but we also have a CU Boulder writing supplement. And I'm really excited to talk about this because I think back to when I was applying to college, and there was just, for me, a lot of mystery about the college essay. And once you write it, what happens to it? And what are admissions counselors specifically looking for when they're reading your college essay? So I hope that I'm able to demystify that a bit for you today. And please know that when I talk about this, this is from my viewpoint at CU Boulder. There are, thousands of US universities, and each one might be looking for slightly different things. But I will go ahead and launch into why universities ask for an essay. So the first thing is that essays really give us counselors a clear idea of you demonstrating your writing and critical thinking skills. For a lot of these essays, there's going to be a very specific prompt in which you're asked to ask a question or to answer a question. And these essays really allow you to showcase your writing and critical thinking skills. For some of those more selective universities that are really looking for a specific type of student, those essays are really a chance for you to demonstrate how you might fit in to that university, as well as if you share the same values. My advice for you, if you're writing an essay that has a bit more to do with the fit and values, so like why this university or why this program or these values are really important to us, how do you fit in to that? I would say definitely do your research on the university or those specific programs. As admissions counselors and admissions committees, we can really tell when a student has or has not done their research on the university. We also ask for an essay. I know specifically at CU Boulder, we do a holistic review when evaluating our applicants. So we don't have set minimums for grades or for test scores because we know that our students are more than just those two pieces. And the essays, as well as the letters of recommendation, those are two things that can really set a student apart who might be kind of towing the line for being admissible. The essays, they really showcase who you are as a person and as a student beyond just what your tests or beyond what your transcripts tell us. So they are a very important piece in that holistic review process. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is that, yes, as your admissions counselor, I will be reviewing your application and I will be reading your essays. However, I am not the only person that will do that. And while you and I may get the chance to really get to know each other throughout the admissions process, there are going to be other people at the university that read your application and read your essays. So to give you an idea of how it works specifically at CU Boulder, there will be a committee within the admissions office that reviews your application. I will be on that committee. However, if you're applying to some of our more selective programs, say anything within our engineering department, our College of Media Communication and Information, our Leeds School of Business, there are going to be admissions committees as well within those specific colleges that are reviewing your application and reading your essays. So it's important to remind yourself that these essays really allow you to showcase who you are, but they really help us on these admissions committees get to know you. Because like I keep saying, we know that you are a person beyond just what your scores in your transcripts say. And we are really interested in getting to know you because we know that you have a lot of really diverse interests and a lot of things that make you special. So then the next thing I want to talk about is how CU really uses the essay and kind of what that looks like on the Common Application. So on the Common Application, there are going to be several different areas in which you will be able to talk about yourself. So on the Common Application, there are 7 writing prompts, and these really range. There are 6 that ask you a really specific question, and the 7th one is just to talk about whatever you want to talk about. At CU, we only require that you respond to one of those writing prompts. One of my favorites that I read, and I don't see a ton of students writing on this, but I think it's really interesting. One of the Common Application writing prompts is to talk about something that you can just get lost in and lose complete track of time. And I think that's a really cool essay in which you can talk about something that you just get so carried away with and you lose complete track of time. I think that's cool as an admissions counselor to kind of read about what makes students tick. At CU, we also have a CU Boulder writing supplement, which I will go into a lot more detail here in a bit, and hopefully we can workshop and you can get some ideas. And then also on the Common Application, there is going to be information, or there is going to be a section in which you're able to provide additional information. Now, I think this additional information section is especially helpful for my students who maybe suffered a bit one semester and they maybe saw a dip in their grades, or potentially something really personal was happening in their lives where maybe once again their grades suffered, or they had to change schools, or maybe their family moved, or just anything else where you don't want that thing to be a part of your essays. Maybe that's not the thing that you want to highlight, but you do want to acknowledge that that was maybe something that happened in your life, or something that impacted your college search, or maybe how you performed as a student. And then the other thing that the Common Application is doing this year is that they are asking students if you were impacted by COVID-19, whether that be, which let's be honest, for all of our students this has happened. They've had to go to remote learning, and for some of our students that may be a big challenge for them either in the classroom, or they weren't able to participate in the same activities. I'm really thankful that the Common Application included a section about COVID-19, because I, as an admissions counselor, as I'm reading your essays, I know that you have been impacted by COVID, and I would much rather your 2 essays, both your CU Boulder writing supplement and the Common Application writing prompt, I would much rather read those essays about who you are than necessarily how you've been impacted by COVID. It's not to say you can't write about the impact that COVID has played on your life, but please keep in mind that all of our students are being impacted by COVID. And I think it's really great that the Common Application has included a question where you can respond specifically to how you've been impacted by COVID. Okay, so the next piece I want to talk about is what you shouldn't and what you should do as you are approaching writing your college essay. So we're going to start with what you should not do. And then hopefully that lends a bit more clarity to what you then should do. So the first thing you shouldn't do when writing your essay is make it your resume. We see a lot of students who will just go through all of the activities and involvement that they've done throughout secondary school. There are a couple different areas on the Common Application where you will be able to talk about those things. So on the Common Application, you can input some of your activities and involvement and achievements and honors. But also at CU Boulder, you can upload your resume to the Common Application or to your application status page. So don't feel like those essays need to be your resume. The other thing we don't want you to do is to only recount. So we really want you to reflect on an experience, and that's kind of where that critical thinking piece really comes into play. So as you're writing your essays, we really want you to think about, okay, what did I learn from this experience? Or how have I changed? And we would much rather have you really reflect on that certain moment in time or that specific experience. This next piece also ties into the reflection piece, but we do not want you to be too broad. So your essay is only going to be about 1 page in length. So most of these essays range from about 250 words to about 650 words. That's not a lot of space once you get writing, so your essay doesn't need to cover your whole entire life. Those essays that I find to be really interesting are when students really focus on a certain situation or a certain moment in time, and we really want you to be specific. The other thing we do not want you to do is to send us your first draft. However, along with this, I do see some students who will have a lot of people edit their essays, and that essay no longer becomes theirs. So I think what is really helpful when thinking about who and how you should have people kind of look over your essay is to have one person really read it for the content and to make sure that you are answering that question. But then to have potentially another person look it over for the grammar, kind of for the flow, making sure that grammatically your essay makes sense. All right, so this next piece, here is what you should do when it comes to writing your essay. The most important thing, I think, is to actually answer the question. So for the CU Boulder Writing Supplement, we do ask you a specific question, and we want you to answer that question. Something that I found to be really helpful as I was working on my college essays, but also as I went throughout college and was writing essays or potentially responding to like a research question, is to really keep that question in a place that is visible to you. So for some people, that might be writing the question on a sticky note and just having it up by your computer. For other people, that might be in the header of your document, keeping your question visible there. And I think as you're writing those essays, to make sure that either each sentence or each paragraph is answering the question. And I'll talk a bit more specifically about that when we talk about the CU Boulder Writing Supplement. The next thing that you should do is you should write about you. You would really be surprised the number of essays in which a student doesn't write about themselves, but maybe fills their essays with quotes by other people. Please know that, Mark Twain isn't applying to CU Boulder, but that you are applying to CU Boulder, and we want to hear from you. So remember that these essays give you the chance to get to know you and to really get to know the person that's applying to the university. So make sure that we do get to know you. My next piece of advice is to make sure that you are using your voice. Some tips with this is to really read your essay out loud. Does it sound like you? I think something that can happen when students are writing their college essay is that they may feel that they need to sound super academic. in their essays. But for some students, that may not be how they naturally sound. You know, if you are somebody that writes naturally, very academically, that is amazing. However, if that's not you, that's okay. And I tell my students to have fun with their essays, which I know, you know, if you're feeling like it needs to be super academic and feeling like you need to approach it from like a research and an academic sense, you may feel that you can't have fun with it. However, you can have fun with it. And I think this next part ties into using your voice, but really make it personal. We want you to be thoughtful and to write about something that you care about or something that you're really passionate about. Because we find that when a student writes about something that they are very passionate about, that will connect with the reader. An example I like to give for this is we had a student who wrote about grilled cheese sandwiches, which you might think, okay, grilled cheese sandwiches, that's not academic at all. Like, how is that related to applying to college, and how is that related to me as a person? However, this student, he lived alone with his dad. His mother had passed away, and he said his dad was a terrible cook. So throughout high school, he and his dad, at the end of the day, like once he got done with school, whatever other extracurricular activities, and once his dad got home from work, they would make grilled cheese sandwiches together. And this really allowed him to actually get to know his father, and for his father to really get to know him and kind of unwind at the end of the day. And he talked about the process of actually making grilled cheese sandwiches and how he had certain tasks and how his dad had certain tasks with that. So that essay, it was very personal. He was able to use his voice. He talked about who he was, and he answered the writing prompt. So those are just a couple things that I want you to keep in mind as you're writing the essay. However, what I think is the most important thing to keep in mind, and the thing that I hope as you leave this session today that helps guide your essays, is you should be asking yourself as you're writing these essays, what do I want admissions committees to know about me as a real person and not just what I have done? Okay, so I want to spend a bit of time talking about this Boulder writing prompt. So this was a new prompt for us last year, and I'm really happy that we're keeping it this year. So the first thing in this writing prompt, you're going to see the word "no two buffs are alike." So at CU Boulder, our mascot is the buffalo. You'll see in this picture, we actually have a real buffalo. Her name is Ralphie, and Ralphie is featured in this photo. Ralphie actually runs at the start and at halftime of all of our football games. So even if you're not into football, it's worth going to the games just to see Ralphie run, because it is a very unique tradition that we have. So yes, our students call themselves the Buffs, as in buffaloes. Okay, so our writing prompt is, at the University of Colorado Boulder, no two Buffs are alike. We value difference and support equity and inclusion of all students and their many intersecting identities. Pick one of your unique identities and describe its significance. So I bolded that last section because that is really the prompt and the question that we are asking you to write about. Now with this writing prompt, something that I have seen some students do is they will not write about one of their unique identities. However, they spend time talking about the importance of identities and recognizing identities. And that is not what we are asking you to do. We want to get to know you. So we are asking you to pick one of your unique identities and to describe its significance. So on this next slide, I have listed just a couple different identities that I have either seen in essays or might consider writing about. So I'm just going to go through just a few of these, and I hope that it gives you a better idea of what we're looking for, or some of kind of those essays that have really stuck out in my mind. And like I said before, please keep in mind that these essays are only about a page in length. So you only really need to reflect on one identity that is important to you. So this first one that I have on here is punk. And with this, I had a student from Brazil who was super into punk music. And the way he approached his essay, his dad was also very into punk music. So as a young kid, his dad was taking him to these concerts. His dad was also in like a punk rock band. And he wrote about how punks, they are often considered kind of like the outcasts of society. However, the punk community is a very welcoming community because they accept people from all different backgrounds and those people who would traditionally be outcasts in a society. So he wrote that through punk music and through kind of the punk scene, he learned how to be a very welcoming person, and that was something that he was hoping to bring to CU Boulder, and really hoping as he was meeting other students and kind of going through that first year of college to maybe look at those students who are sitting alone in the dining hall and to go up and approach them and get to know them, because as that punk scene kind of installs those values in him, it is important to get to know people beyond just how they present, because people are so much more. The next identity I want to talk about is foodie. So this was from another one of my Brazilian applicants, and she was Japanese Brazilian. So she wrote about being a foodie kind of through the lens of her family. So she grew up with her Japanese grandparents, and she was always made fun of as a kid from the lunches that she brought because they were traditional Japanese lunches, and her Brazilian classmates would always make fun of her. And she said she developed a really unhealthy relationship to food because of that. However, as she grew up and as she kind of learned about her Japanese food culture, she began to take a lot more pride in that culture. And something that she became really passionate about as a high school student was cooking both Japanese and Brazilian food, and really exploring her two identities as a Japanese Brazilian through the lens of food. And not only was she able to explore those identities, but she was able to gain a much healthier relationship to food. And she was able to form a lot of really tight-knit friendships throughout high school through that exploration of food. So that was something that was that really stuck out in my mind. The next identity I want to talk about is makeup artist. So this was one of my chemical engineering applicants, and she is a makeup artist. She has her own YouTube channel in which she does her makeup and others' makeup. And she developed a really big interest in kind of the chemical composition of makeup. And what she wanted to do in college was to become a chemical engineer, where she could learn about how makeup is made, how it can be made sustainably, and then ultimately she wants to create her own makeup line. And I just thought that essay was really interesting because she talks about something that she's so passionate about and something that has shaped her life up to this point. But she also ties in her academic interests and how she wants to kind of explore that identity through the lens of what she wants to do in college. And then the final thing I want to talk about, it's that final thing on this list, it's dog lover. So as I've kind of been thinking about these essays, I've thought about my friends and my family and what they might write about when it comes to an essay. So you might not think that dog lover is an identity. However, if you were to meet my sister, you would soon realize that it is indeed an identity. So my sister, she's a couple years younger than me. She also lives out here in Colorado. When she was in college, she was a communication major. And what she did for her senior research project is she was always interested in dogs. And she developed a research project for her communication major in which she went to dog parks. And what she really wanted to learn about was how people at dog parks interact with each other. Because I'm sure if you have a dog or if you've observed people with dogs, you will notice that they talk to other people with dogs much differently, and they might be a lot more willing to talk to each other if they have a dog, because it kind of serves as a great gateway or an entry into conversation, because you don't have to talk about yourself, but you can instead talk about your dogs and really get to know each other. So she spent so many hours at different dog parks around town observing people. She also brought my family's dog with her to the dog park to see how people interacted with her versus when she went alone without a dog, how people interacted with her. So that's one part of her identity that is really important. But the other thing that she did, so two other things that she's done. My sister works for a nonprofit that helps people in the community of Westminster, and they have a food bank, as well as housing for families who have been displaced. She noticed, though, that a lot of these families have pets, and pets are a really important part of your family, and you know that if you have an animal, it becomes a family member. And she was noticing that a lot of these families, when they were displaced, one of the things that they had to do is give up their pet and maybe give it to the Humane Society, which can be really, really heartbreaking and can lead, to depression. So what she wanted to do is she wanted to make sure that those families or those people who had pets, that they were able to keep them when they moved into the shelter or into temporary housing. So she made sure that that was a priority for their organization, but then she also started up a pet food bank, because that can also be really expensive. And then the final thing I want to talk about her and how dog lover is a huge part of her identity. So my family, we have always grown up with West Highland White Terriers. So that's like stereotypical, like fluffy white dogs that you see on like so many commercials. So Betsy actually started an Instagram account for our family Westie. And when she moved out to Colorado, she actually started a community of fellow Westie lovers. And they would meet up monthly at the dog park, and you would just see anywhere from 15 to 30 Westies running around. So I think, dog lover, you might not think of that as an identity. However, I hope that as I kind of talked through that and talked about what she might talk about in her essay, that you have some better ideas of identities that might be unique to you and might be something that you can really talk about in that essay and have some fun with. So I'm just going to open up the Q&A box and see if we have any questions related to the essays before I talk about CU Boulder. And then, like I said, you will definitely have time to ask questions about CU Boulder. Okay, so the first question we have is, what should typically be the length of our essays so as to ensure they're not too short or too long? That is a great question. I think a good length is going to be just about one page, like a one-page typed out Word document, single space. I believe that that is typically about 650 words, which is, I believe, the limit on the Common Application. So yeah, I would say just about a page length is really good, because it allows you to get your point across, but to also not feel like it has to be super long. Okay, this next question: if I plan to take a gap year due to the coronavirus, what should we include as reasons for the gap year in our essay? I think that would be really great to put in that potentially that additional information section, unless you have like a really outstanding experience in your gap year that you want to talk about your essays. At CU Boulder specifically, we see more and more students that are taking a gap year, and that would certainly not count against you. And the way that I've seen students approach that is in the past is maybe say, I decided after high school I wanted to take a gap year where I could really focus on having an internship, or making sure, like for COVID-19, making sure that I am able to actually be on campus once classes start, because that's really important to me. So I would just, I think in that additional information section, I think that that would be a great space for you to talk about that. But do know that you don't have to go into a ton of detail if you don't want to. You certainly could, but we're seeing so many students take gap years, so I think it will be quite common. What are some of the topics that universities ask in essay questions? So you're going to see a lot of universities ask you to reflect on potentially a point in time where your values were challenged, or where you maybe changed as a person, or maybe where you made a mistake and what you've learned from it. I would say that is a pretty big one. And I think with these essays, you're going to see a lot of universities really want to see how you have changed as a person, or maybe when you've been confronted with something that's been particularly challenging, because college, especially that first year, you may face a lot of challenges as well. And I think, so I should mention on our website, we do kind of go through our application, and you can find the common application writing prompts on there. And I would really say that those 7 writing prompts kind of encompass all the different things that various universities may be looking for. Would there be a particular format we should follow, such as things to include in the intro, the body, and conclusions, and need to cover points such as our academic achievements, career goals, and personal strengths? Okay, so that first part with the particular format, no, there is no particular format you need to follow. You know, the most typical one we see students do are going to kind of be like a 5-paragraph, like the intro, the conclusion, and the 3 points in between. However, I have seen students be a lot more creative with their essays. So one of them, which it might be a bit hard for me to describe, but I'm going to do my best. I had a student who he was interested in engineering. However, he also wanted to minor in music, and he was bullied as a student. So the way he laid out his essay is he talked about like a day at school in which his bully was bullying him. However, the way he broke it down is he talked about it kind of as an orchestra. So he talked about how he was acutely aware of the noises throughout the day. So like pencils dropping, like crowds of students dispersing. And it wasn't like your typical 5-paragraph essay. It was like just kind of like individual sentences and then slightly larger paragraphs. So do know that it doesn't have to follow a typical format. If you're able to be creative, you are more than welcome to do that. But if not, don't stress out about that. And then do the essays need to cover certain points as academic achievements, career goals, and personal strengths? They don't necessarily have to. In that additional information section, in the place where you're able to upload your resume, in the honors and achievements, as well as extracurriculars and activities, that's where you can really focus, or that's where you can list those. If there is a particular academic achievement or particular career goal or personal strength, like one of those things that you really want to deep dive into, you can definitely do that. But as I'd mentioned previously, we don't want your essays to be too broad. We would rather have you focus on like a really specific point in time. How much time should we be spending preparing for our essays instead of keeping it last minute? Now is a great time to start on your essays. Our application is open. I personally always find that when I'm writing, like at first, I'm just going to kind of word vomit and just get a lot of things out on the page. And then I'm going to step away from that essay for a few days and then come back to it. And then I'm going to kind of see, okay, here are the things that I kind of want to get down. Let's maybe work on getting this in a more concise way. And so then I'll work on that essay a bit more, and then I might take a few days away from it as well. So I really think like for a good essay, and it might, you might be an amazing essay writer, so you don't need this much time, but I would say a couple of weeks to work on your essay, or a week at the very least, just because I think it does help where you can write, you can step aside, you can write again, you can step aside, you can send your essay off to somebody to proofread and then come back to it. We as admissions counselors, we typically know when a student has waited for the very last minute to work on their essay. That becomes quite obvious to us, so definitely take some time on those essays. How do we share reasons for the decision of not taking the SAT or ACT, but US universities require them? So I'm going to talk about CU Boulder specifically. So we don't require an ACT or SAT for admissions purposes. It's always been that way for international students. However, this year we're not requiring it for US students or US citizens abroad. I think when you're approaching that, you could definitely talk about it either in the additional information section on the common application or the COVID-19 section. I think it's a very valid reason that you're not taking them, especially as we see more and more countries not, and more places in the US not offering them. My advice for students is always to get in touch with their admissions counselor at their university and have a conversation with them about it. And that specific university may be able to shed some light about how to approach that in your essay. However, at CU Boulder, because we don't require it, you don't need to write about that. Okay, would you recommend that we take a second opinion on having an expert like our college counselor review our college essays and give us tips? I always think it's helpful to have another person take a look at them and to give you advice and to kind of help workshop with you. When thinking about like the CU Boulder writing prompt, so talking about identities, I think it might be helpful to go to friends and families and be like, can you maybe help me brainstorm what some of my identities are? Or for some of those other writing prompts that you may see, I think it's always helpful to kind of get that outside opinion at first if you're feeling unsure at all, and to kind of workshop with them ahead of time. Then you go back to your essay, and then to then go to somebody else to have them edit it and review it for you. Okay, so the other question before I start talking about CU Boulder, can we share our weaknesses and how admissions at your university would help me overcome my weaknesses? Yes, you can absolutely do that. I think when we're thinking about those weakness essays, I love them because our students are able to be really vulnerable. So, if you maybe think of one of your weaknesses as being, let's just say you're really shy and you've been working in high school to kind of come out of your shell. However, maybe you've been attending school with the same people for 12 to 15 years, and you're really looking forward when coming to college to kind of be able to reinvent yourself. You can absolutely talk about that in your essay. While that may not necessarily be something that you approach in the CU Boulder writing prompt in the common application essay, that certainly might be something that you can approach. And I think those weaknesses or how you've grown or a challenge that you faced, I think those essays are really great because it does allow you to talk about it does allow you to reflect and kind of talk about how you've changed or grown as a person. And us admissions counselors, we love kind of those personal growth questions. So that was a lot of information. Thank you so much for listening to the college essay section. And I am now going to talk a bit about CU Boulder. I'm just going to take a quick drink of water.
Thank you so much, Abby. Appreciate your time in answering everything. And if the session goes a little bit longer, I hope you can see me. I'm not too sure. Because I know there were a lot of questions. If it goes a little bit longer, please don't worry about that. The students and parents will be waiting. Thank you again.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay, so in this section, I will talk a bit about our university as well as the application process to CU. As I had mentioned earlier, I will put up my contact information at the end. I, however, am offering virtual appointments now really through the end of the fall semester and potentially longer. So if you would like to sign up for a virtual appointment with me, I'll be sure to include that information as well, just because this is so much information, and I'm more than happy to talk through things one-on-one with you, specifically about the university or the application or any of that stuff. So please keep that in mind. You will definitely have access to me after this. So the University of Colorado Boulder, we are located in Boulder, Colorado. So this map is really helpful. We are this gold state. When you fly into Colorado, you'll actually fly into Denver. That is where a major international airport is. And then Boulder is about 30 to 45 minutes northwest of Denver. And the great thing I'd like to point out, as a student, you're going to have free public transportation in Boulder, in Denver, and kind of everywhere in between. So there's actually a bus that runs directly from the Denver airport directly to our campus. And once you get your bus pass, you will be able to take that bus for free, which is really helpful. But the city of Boulder has a little over 100,000 people. We're definitely a college town. We've been named the #1 college town in the US. However, I think you really get kind of the best of 3 worlds when you attend the University of Colorado Boulder, because being so close to Denver, we're right next to a huge city. So when you're thinking about those internship and research opportunities, either in Boulder or in Denver, kind of the surrounding area, there's so many different places that you can do that experience with. The second world, you are in a really tight-knit community in Boulder, and because we are a college town, the town really caters it and lends itself to supporting college students. And then the other thing, so I'm going to show you this picture. We are located right in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. So this kind of mountainous area that you see, this is called the Flatirons. And I think this picture is a bit deceiving. So everything with the red roof, that is all of our campus. However, to get to the closest trailhead, to get to the Flatirons, it is about, a 3-minute drive away from campus, 10-minute walk, 5-minute cycle to get to that trailhead, which is called Chautauqua Park, to actually hike up into the Flatirons, which is super cool. You're going to find that as a university, our students love to get outside and to really breathe in the fresh air. We have over 300 days of sunshine and just that clean mountain air. You're going to be from like the major ski resorts, like 2 to 2.5 hours away, depending on traffic. And even if you don't consider yourself an outdoorsy person, which I certainly didn't before moving out here, you're going to definitely get outside, whether that be hiking, bouldering, skiing, snowboarding, kayaking, mountain biking. And then the city of Boulder, we actually have more miles of trails than we do of actual roads in Boulder. So people are always out cycling, running, walking. So it is a very pedestrian-friendly city, which is something that I love. But as far as academics go, and just kind of a bit more information about the university, we are a Tier 1 research university and a part of the prestigious Association of American Universities. So what that means for you as a student is that we do focus a lot on research, including undergraduate research, and I'll talk a bit more about that here in a couple of slides. We have a little over 33,000 students, and that includes undergraduate and graduate students. About 10% of our student body is international students, and they represent over 100 different countries. However, what that number doesn't capture is the number of US citizens who have attended school outside of the US. And we have quite a substantial number of those students coming in. So I would say for students who have attended school outside of the US, it's about 15 to 18% of our student body. So you really do get like a diverse group of students. Now we have 7 colleges, schools, and programs of study. We have some of the major ones include our College of Engineering and Applied Science, our Leeds School of Business, our College of Arts and Sciences, our law school, our College of Music, our College of Education, and then our College of Media Communication and Information. So that is just like some really high level information before we dive in a bit more deeply into our university. So up here, we do have some rankings. Now, I know that rankings can sometimes be deceiving. I know that rankings sometimes guide students and families' search. So that is why we throw them up here. However, rankings definitely don't tell the whole story. The University of Colorado Boulder, we are really well known for a lot of our STEM programs. And we have absolutely outstanding physics and engineering programs, chemistry programs, psychology and neuroscience, mathematics. And we've actually been named the #1 university in the world for geosciences. We care a lot about the environment, and you can kind of find those geosciences sprinkled into a bunch of different majors. But the other thing that this rankings list doesn't include is a lot of our arts and sciences and kind of humanities and social sciences programs, which we're seeing an increasing number of students really being interested in those. So those are just some of our rankings. But I want to talk a bit about what it's like to be a student here and some of the professors that you may have. So at CU Boulder, we actually have 5 professors who have won Nobel Prizes. Thomas Cech, who is featured on here, he is our chemistry professor who's won a Nobel Prize. Dr. Cech actually still teaches intro to chemistry courses, so I think it's really cool that you could potentially, as a first-year student, be taught by a Nobel Prize winner. Our other 4 Nobel Prize winners are actually in our physics department, and they also, some of them still teach intro to first year or intro to physics classes, which I just, once again, think that is really cool. But our professors are very accessible. I know there is kind of a misperception at large public universities that your classes will be taught by graduate students and that you're not going to have access to your professors. However, your professors welcome questions and they hold open office hours where you can really chat one-on-one with them to ask your questions and to get those answers. The next slide is a bit more about academics. So we offer over 4,000 academic courses in over 110 degree programs. And we see that a lot of our students really do, they might double major, or they might have a major and a couple minors and a couple certificates. And I encourage my students to kind of think outside of the box when they're thinking about how they want to really customize their degree. For our engineering students, one of the most common double majors is actually music, which I think is really cool because our engineers, they are creative people, and a lot of them really want to tap into that creative side through music. And you're not just limited to studying one thing while at university. Over 2,000 of our undergraduate students are directly involved in faculty-led research. We have a lot of paid research opportunities. What that number doesn't include, though, is our undergraduate research opportunity program. So that is funding that is set aside just for undergraduate research or undergraduate students to fund their research. So as a student, if there is anything that you're interested in researching, and if you have a passion for leading that research, we definitely encourage you to do so. And we want you to have a conversation with your professors and academic advisors to really build your application to apply for that funding through the undergraduate research opportunities program. As I'd mentioned earlier, there is definitely that misperception that as a public university, your classes are going to be huge and you're not going to have access to professors. However, student to faculty ratio, it is 18:1. So you can definitely build those tight-knit relationships. While I'm still on this slide, I do want to talk about some of our most popular programs that we see international students applying to. The first one is going to be aerospace engineering. So we have an absolutely outstanding aerospace and as well as like astrophysics and other kind of space-related majors and minors. We actually have a minor in space, which is pretty cool. But CU Boulder has graduated 18 NASA astronauts. Amongst public universities, we received the most funding from NASA. And CU Boulder has actually sent missions and research projects to all 8 planets, as well as Pluto, which is really cool. I know one of the concerns for my international students, or my aerospace engineering international students, is that they might not have the same opportunities to participate in internship opportunities, just because with NASA, you do have to have that federal security clearance. However, while you may not be able to work on all NASA projects, a lot of our international students find internships or research opportunities with organizations like Virgin Galactic, SpaceX, Ball Aerospace Engineering, which is actually located right in Boulder. So there's certainly those opportunities. Our physics department is very highly ranked, and our physics professors love chatting with prospective undergraduate students. So you can definitely reach out to them as well with any of those questions. Another big program we see our students applying, or international students applying to, is our computer science program. So our College of Engineering and Applied Science, they have 2 different degree programs for computer science. They have a Bachelor's of Science as well as a Bachelor's of Arts. Now, at the end of the day, our students in both of those programs are getting job placement at the exact same rate. However, if you're really interested in kind of the hardware of computer science, then the Bachelor of Science program will be really good for you. If you're a bit more interested in the software side of things, as well as potentially double majoring, the Bachelor of Arts will be really good for you. And then 2 other programs I want to highlight that we see a lot of our international students apply for. The first is our Leeds School of Business. Now within that, they really have kind of 6 big majors and then about 25 different certificates and minors. With our business school, while internships are not required, they're certainly encouraged. So I believe it's about 96% of our business students have an internship before they graduate. Of those students, about 80% of them had a paid internship. Those internships aren't limited just to the Boulder area, but if you're wanting to go elsewhere in the United States or elsewhere overseas, our advisors will definitely help you with that. And then the final program I want to highlight while we're still on academics is and this kind of ties into geosciences, but it's actually our environmental studies program. So we are seeing more and more students applying for our environmental studies program, and they have a more social science track as well as a more environmental sciences track. So the next piece I want to talk about is kind of that out of the classroom experience. So we have over 500 clubs and organizations, which I know can sound super overwhelming, but they have an involvement fair at the start of every semester, so you can learn about these different groups. And we have a lot of different international student organizations. We have an Indian student organization, tons of other student organizations, and then our international student and scholar services. They do a really good job making sure that international students feel connected and feeling like they can take advantage of all the great things Colorado has to offer. So they will lead excursions into the mountains as well as down into Denver. So you can go to some of the museums and different festivals that happen down there. So you can attend, more than one club every day and still not even like hit every single club that is on campus. As far as athletics go, this is a big question I get. So we kind of have 3 tiers of athletics. We are an NCAA Division I school. If you want to compete at that Division I level, you do kind of have to be the best in your country to compete at the Division I level. However, we also have club sports, which are still highly competitive. You have to try out for the team. You will still travel, but they don't offer scholarships at that level. And then we also have intramural sports, which is what the majority of our students will participate in. As you can see, that number, over 11,000 of our students can participate in intramural sports, and that's just you competing against other students at the university. And then finally, We do require all of our first year students to live on campus. So we have 24 different residence halls, as well as 17 different dining locations. I want to give a plug for our dining halls. I have been so impressed by all of the different options that our dining halls have. As somebody that is a vegetarian, I am always really concerned about whether or not there will be veggie options for me. And there are more than enough vegetarian options. The other thing too, if you have any dietary restrictions or allergies, you can talk to the chefs ahead of time and they can either create a custom meal plan for you, or they also do a really good job labeling those different allergens as well. So you will definitely not go hungry while on campus. The final thing I want to talk about is really student success. So we do find that our international students are really successful upon graduation. So over 94% of our international graduates were either employed or in graduate school within 6 months of graduation. 85% of those employed international students find their jobs in the US, and over 77% were employed in a job upon graduation. And some of our top employers include Amazon, the University of Colorado Boulder, especially with those research positions. Google actually has a campus in Boulder, so we do see a lot of our students getting jobs with Google, as well as like Ball Aerospace. So there's certainly a lot more places beyond just what we list here. And I think we want our students to get involved during school through internships and research. Not only does that help you kind of figure out what it is you want to do, but it also helps you when you are applying for jobs upon graduation, and know that you're not going to be left out on your own to find those job opportunities. Our professors and our career centers will definitely help students through that. So real quick, I want to run through some application information. So our application opened a couple of days ago. Our spring deadline is October 1st, and we typically let students know within about 4 to 6 weeks of their admission decision for the spring deadline. However, our two big fall application deadlines, early action is November 15th. That is non-binding. You can apply to as many universities as you want. It is different from early decision, which we do not have. The only real advantage that our early action applicants will have is they get that admission decision a lot sooner than the regular decision students. So early action students will get their decision no later than February 1st. Our regular decision deadline is January 15th. And we will let students know no later than April 1st of their decision. So as you're kind of thinking about managing your stress levels, I always think it's helpful to apply sooner rather than later. You can get those applications out of the way. That way you can kind of focus on the rest of your final year of high school. But then you also get that decision sooner rather than later, which at a lot of universities, the decision deadline is May 1st. So I do know that that is really helpful when it comes to making that decision. So I want to talk just a bit about our application and kind of what that looks like on our end as well as your end. So as far as required materials go, we ask for the common application. The application fee is $70. We're going to ask for transcripts equivalent to US grades 9 through 12, as well as any examination certificates. So if you are enrolled in IGCSEs, CBSE, ICSE, any of those things, we will require your exam certificates for what you have up to that point. We also asked for those 2 personal essays, which I had touched on earlier, and then at least 1 academic letter of recommendation. You can, of course, have additional recommenders. We will read all of them. So I think 3 is kind of like the sweet spot for recommenders. My advice to students when it comes to recommenders, we don't care much about the title of the person writing your letter of recommendation. We more so want to hear from somebody who has had you in the classroom and who can speak to you as a student. For my students who are applying to our STEM programs, if you can have somebody in a STEM field write a letter of recommendation, I always think that's helpful just because, you know, a lot of times the work that you do in those STEM related classes it's going to be a lot different than the work you do, say, in an English class. So it is helpful to have somebody who's known you in that capacity write a letter of recommendation. And then as far as ACT or SAT goes, as I had mentioned earlier, we only require it for scholarship consideration. We are also currently evaluating our review process for scholarships, just because a lot of students aren't going to have the access to take the ACT or SAT. So unfortunately, I don't have more information about that at the moment, since that is under review, but hopefully we have a better idea soon. The other thing I want to mention, when you apply to CU Boulder, you will apply to a particular major. If you don't know what you want to major in, that is okay. We have open option as well as our program in exploratory studies. So it is perfectly okay if you do not know what you want to major in. And I would really encourage you to schedule a one-on-one appointment with me, and we can kind of talk through those details. So after you send in that information, we will do a holistic review. So we consider everything that is sent in support of your application. Now, if you apply to one of our more competitive majors, and if you're not quite competitive enough for direct entry into that program, we will still consider you for admission into the university as a whole. So then after that, we will academically admit our students if they're admissible. And then there are 3 pieces of information that we'll need from you before we can issue you your visa and before you can confirm your intent to enroll. So the first thing we will need is proof of English proficiency. So we accept TOEFL, IELTS, as well as Duolingo, which I'm really excited. We're accepting Duolingo. And then we will also need proof of funding. So we'll provide a worksheet for you to complete that, as well as a scan of your passport. After you send in that information, you will then be able to confirm your intent to enroll. And we will send you your I-20 so you can apply for the visa. Now, the thing I didn't put on here is the deadline. So I'm sure you're aware that May 1st is the National College Decision deadline. While that is a deadline at CU Boulder for our international applicants, we do extend that deadline to June 15th, just because there are several additional pieces of information that we need from you, like the proof of English proficiency and the proof of funding. So do know that international applicants have a bit more time to get that in. I know that's like a year from now, so we'll definitely have those conversations if you are seriously considering CU Boulder as we approach those dates. That was a lot of information. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the question box and hopefully answer some of your questions. And then I will throw up my contact information as well on the next slide, and then also send you all my calendar for those virtual appointments. Okay. Ooh, this is a great question. How many Indian students do you have, and can you share what they are pursuing? So I'm so sorry. I should have done my research ahead of time to know the exact number of Indian students that we have on campus. We definitely have a couple hundred. So Indian students actually make up our second largest group of international students on campus, right behind Chinese students. And as far as what they are pursuing, so some of the major programs that they're in, engineering is going to be huge, especially aerospace engineering, mechanical engineering, as well as computer science. We have a lot of Indian students in our business programs, and at the master's level, we do have like a logistics program that we see a lot of our Indian students participate in. And then I would say too, a lot of students in our College of Arts and Sciences, really ranging from like physics, chemistry, psychology, neuroscience, as well as some of those more arts and humanities programs like international affairs, environmental studies. But I know we have that information on our website, kind of the breakdown of where students are coming from. Okay, how can I pursue a STEM program such as computer science and combine it with a non-STEM liberal arts program such as psychology? That is an awesome question. I would say for you, that Bachelor of Arts in Computer Science, double majoring potentially in psychology would be a really good fit. On our website for all of our majors, we do have like a 4-year sample schedule, as well as kind of a breakdown of what classes you need to take where. That computer science Bachelor of Arts degree, that does allow a lot more flexibility and a lot more space in your schedule to pursue a double degree in, say, psychology as well as computer science. I think you might also be surprised as well in the different ways that perhaps during your final year of university, how you can combine those two majors into your research project. So that is a really great question. Okay, what would be the difference between the CSU, so Colorado State University, as well as the University of Colorado system in Colorado in terms of student to faculty ratio and overall learning? That's a great question that I unfortunately don't have an answer to. I don't know a ton about CSU. What I would advise you is to have a conversation both with an admissions counselor there as well as me. I do know that CSU, they have like an ag program. So there are going to be certain majors at CSU that CU doesn't have. I do know that at CU, our engineering college is quite a bit bigger, and we do have different engineering programs that they do, or compared to them. However, as a public university, I would imagine that the student to faculty ratio is roughly similar. I would imagine that classes are roughly similar as well in terms of how they are taught. But I think at the end of the day, like, have conversations with admissions counselors and students at both schools, and maybe even professors, and that might help you with that distinction. As a 12th grade student who wants to pursue engineering at a US university, what research and assistantships would be available to undergraduate students? Another great question. So with that, that's something I kind of touched on earlier. Our undergraduate students are able to help professors as well as graduate students in those research opportunities. You're also able to lead your own research. However, CU Boulder is associated with I believe 11 different research research centers, and then over 90 different research facilities. They are not only on our campus, but kind of in Boulder and other areas. One of them, we actually have an Arctic Research Center that is in the Arctic. So if that is something that you're really interested in, you could potentially go there and do research. We also have like various research centers located in the mountains of Colorado and elsewhere. So depending on what you're interested in researching, there's definitely going to be those opportunities for you, and your specific department will definitely be able to provide additional details with that. How can a business student pursue a major or minor in design at CU Boulder? So design is a really interesting kind of topic at our university because we don't have a specific graphic design program. However, there are different programs that we have that do have a design component. So with that, you could, as you had stated, you could be a business major with some sort of design related minor. So in our College of Engineering, we actually, they just changed its name. I apologize, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it used to be the Technology, Arts, and Media program, or TAM, within our College of Engineering. So that was a really great program for my students who are interested in being engineers, but also interested in the design side of things. We also have our program in environmental design. That's for my architecture students or product design students who are really interested in kind of that design component. And then there are some other programs perhaps within our College of Media Communication and Information that have that design component. And then I'm so sorry, I don't know all of the minors and certificates within business, but I would imagine that there are a couple more design related things within there. Do internship opportunities that I had mentioned usually take place over summer breaks or during the semester as part of a co-op program? Another awesome question. So our engineering school, they do have co-op programs. However, they also just have like regular research and internship programs. It really depends on what it is that you're doing. I would say we typically see students who will participate in internships during the semester, but at a more limited capacity. So maybe 10 to 15 hours per week. And then over the summer, they will do like a more full-time internship. So it really depends on your schedule and what fits best for you. But do know that there are opportunities at any point in time. The closest international airport to us is the Denver International Airport. When I have flown to India, I typically fly from India to Germany and then Germany to Denver. So just 2 flights. Okay, can you describe the difference between early action and early decision? That is an excellent question. So we do not have early decision, we only have early action. Early decision schools, students who are applying early decision, it is binding. So you are saying that if the university admits you and that if the university is able to fulfill your funding needs, that you will commit to them. We typically only see like those really selective universities do early decision. You're going to see a lot more universities do early action. Like I said, early action, it's non-binding. You just get that admission decision sooner rather than later. Okay. From an admissions and scholarship point of view, can you share the importance? Transcripts, test scores, English scores, letters of recommendation, and essays. That's a great question. I wish I had the graphic with me. I know they have it in our other information sessions, but the academic component is definitely at the top. So that is where like really transcripts and your course schedule would fit in. I would say then kind of the next important things are going to be your essays and letters of recommendation. At CU Boulder, because we do not require test scores, they're not going to play a role in your admission decision, nor will the English scores play a role in the admission decision. Now, if you happen to not meet our minimum English proficiency requirements, that is okay. We actually have an International English Center on campus where you can take English classes at the same time as taking courses at the university to really improve your English. But yeah, I would say the academic component is certainly the most important just because you're applying to an academic institution, but we keep in mind as we're evaluating students that sometimes things happen, and I think those essays and letters of recommendation definitely kind of fill in that piece. For the I-20 submission, what are financial documents that are acceptable? And what is the amount we should be stating in the financial document? Another great question. So on our website, we do have a more detailed breakdown of the cost of attendance. I would say at CU Boulder, kind of a good amount to plan for tuition, fees, room and board, additional expenses, transportation, health insurance is going to be close to $70,000 US. That is without scholarships. We do also have additional information on acceptable types of proof of funding. I would say the most common is going to be a bank statement showing the amount, but we will definitely provide those worksheets. Can you share information on campus safety and the safety in the city of Boulder? Another great question. So I would say Boulder as well as our campus are very safe. The reason for that, so we have a little over 100,000 people. As I'd mentioned earlier, we are a really pedestrian friendly city. So people are typically not driving and are typically riding their bikes, taking the city bus, walking places. So I think as a city, like, because people are like all on about and kind of on the lookout, it does feel very I do want to be mindful though when I answer this question, because when you're looking at schools in the US, like racism is definitely a thing that people in the US encounter. Gun violence is definitely a thing that people in the US encounter. So like that is certainly something that I want to stress and I want to acknowledge that that is that is something that you definitely have to think about when you're applying to schools in the US. However, I would say that Boulder and that campus is a very safe space for our students. We get like email updates when there's been a security issue on campus. And I hope this doesn't scare any of you away, but I would say the most common security issues we face are bears coming to campus or bears being spotted on campus. So just something to keep in mind, but I do want to acknowledge that that there is certainly all those additional things that you should consider when applying to school in the US. Information on the amount of scholarships that international students receive. I'm also just going to flip to this next slide so you can have my contact information, just because I know that some of you are probably getting ready to go. But as far as scholarship information, so at the moment we have our 2 automatic consideration merit-based scholarships, which include the Presidential Scholarship, which is for $55,000 divided over your 4 years. That is awarded to the top 1 to 3% of our non-resident students. So you do have to typically have near perfect test scores as well as near perfect grades. However, we also have our Chancellor Scholarship, which is for $25,000 divided over your 4 years. That is awarded to the top 25% of our admitted students. And there's a bit more leniency with test scores and grades. Oftentimes we find that our students who are invited into our honors programs also receive a scholarship that is up to the discretion of each honors program to determine who receives those scholarships. We also have a separate scholarship application that you'll get access to after applying to the university, and that includes a lot of private scholarships. That application typically opens up around October 15th to November 1st. It is overseen by our Office of Financial Aid, and the deadlines for a lot of those scholarships fall between about February 15th to March 15th. My other piece of advice, talk to your guidance counselors, talk to Education USA, look for as many private scholarships as you can and apply for as many of those scholarships as you can. I want to be transparent that as a public university, we are beholden to the taxpayers of Colorado. So tuition and scholarships, or tuition is much less expensive and scholarships are much more robust for our Colorado residents compared to our non-resident students, including international students. However, with that being said, there are a lot of scholarships that you can also apply for as a current CU Boulder student that are open to international students. Can you provide a breakdown for costs for tuition fees, meal plans, housing costs, and other costs for undergraduate students? I can, however, I can't do that off the top of my head. I will, I'm going to include some links here at the end. So if you stick around, I'll be sure to include that. Otherwise, you can certainly email me as well. Will classes for 2021 be on campus, provided online, or a mix, both due to COVID-19? That's a great question that I do not have an answer to. I will say that for the fall 2020 semester, we are doing hybrid. So we are offering both in-person classes as well as remote classes. For some of my incoming 2020 students, they are planning to stay in their home country and take remote classes through CU Boulder. And then they're hoping that the situation will be well enough where they can come on campus for the spring 2021 semester. I don't have information though for either spring or fall 2021, what classes will be like. We'll just have to keep watching what happens with COVID-19. What are your minimum requirements for achieving an admission and scholarship? So we do not have any set minimums because we do that holistic review. On our website, which I will also include, we do have the middle 50% for admitted first-year students into each of our colleges. As you would imagine, our engineering college is certainly the most competitive out of all of our colleges. That is also because they have less space available than, say, our College of Arts and Sciences. Same thing goes with our College of Business, also very competitive. There is a space limitation. However, as I mentioned earlier, if you are not directly admissible into the program of your choice. That is not the end of the world. You will still be admitted, or there's a strong chance you'll still be admitted into the university. And then there are also additional pathways where you can still, at the end of the day, graduate with that degree in, say, engineering or business. We just have some additional support put in place. And then with the scholarships, I hope I had touched on that earlier, but I can definitely send more information. The size of our campus and the infrastructure amenities available for international students. So we do have a little over 33,000 students on campus. As far as our campus goes space-wise, we have our main campus, and then just right down the road, like a 2-minute bus ride, we have East Campus, which is where a lot of our geosciences, where our aerospace engineering building is. So it's really easy to get to. And then we also have an area that's right next to East Campus. It's called Williams Village, that about half of our first year students live on. And then some of those amenities, as I had mentioned, are international student and scholar services. They provide so many great support for international students. We also have like an international academic support office that helps international students specifically with essays and academic English and just so many different things. Also know that you will be paying for health insurance at the university, but the healthcare is amazing on campus. All of our students, they do get free counseling sessions as well. We take mental health really seriously. So in addition to everything that is available to all of our students, there are a lot of international specific support services that is available to students. Will CU Boulder accept a waiver of English proficiency exams for IBDP students? So with this, we do accept like IBDP or IGCSE on a case-by-case situation. That would be like, we don't like to say, and we're not allowed to say right out that we will waive it for students. That would be a situation where we'd need to have conversation with students, kind of look at your overall grades, look at the strength of your essays. The reason for that is because, so we're governed by a board of regents, and they have set for international students that they do have to provide over TOEFL, either TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo. Also as a part of the visa process as well, you might be required to submit that. So I would say it's in your best interest to still take either of those 3 exams, especially if you're considering different universities. However, we can definitely have a one-on-one conversation where we discuss that. And then the final question, I've loved answering all of these questions. If students defer, take a gap year, will your competitive admissions process become even more competitive or tougher to get into? No, it will not. We are anticipating that we're going to have an influx of applications and an influx of students who will be coming to campus for 2021. We do not want our students who are initially applying for fall 2021 to be at any sort of disadvantage compared to those students who deferred or took a gap year. We are planning for that influx, and fortunately, we have plenty of time to be able to accommodate students and open up additional spaces. So at least at CU Boulder, I don't want you to be worried that for those students who had taken a gap year or who had deferred compared to students who are applying for the first time, I don't want you to be worried about there being any sort of disadvantage that you will be at. These are absolutely wonderful questions. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. In this chat, I want to make sure that I do include some of those links that I had told you about. So one second here. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to send you is my virtual appointment schedule. Please keep in mind that I am updating this weekly, so you're only going to see things out for this next week, but do know I update this very, very regularly. And then the next thing I wanted to provide information on is our like application checklist that includes those essay prompts. And then I also wanted to include the selection process. So you can see the middle 50% of admitted students. And then I'm also going to find information about the cost of attendance. Okay. And then I'm also going to provide, which keep in mind, this could very well easily be outdated once you do apply, but the scholarships for non-resident students. Yes, all right. Well, I think that was all the links that I wanted. Oh, one other link I do want to provide is information about our virtual visits. So our individual colleges are hosting like big virtual information sessions. We're just doing some really cool programming. So I'm going to throw that in as well. But I just really want to thank you all for coming to this session today, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much, Abby. We really, really appreciate your time. I think this is an awesome session. Students, parents, thank you so much. Abby, I know it's very early in the morning out there. Thank you so much for your kind time and support in sharing information, not only about, the session topic, but also about the institution. Because as I mentioned before the session, there was a lot of interest and a lot of emails that we got. So I'm really happy, we could host the sessions and the students could make it as well. Guidance counselors, I have a special message for you. This session is recorded and will be shared with your schools. We know it's late in the evening, around 7 p.m. here in India after a long day of school for your students. So for students and parents who could not make it, as we discussed prior to this session, please share it with your student body so that they will be able to access not only the information, but also the direct contact details that are shared, so that parents, you, and of course the students can be in direct contact with Ms. Abby. I'm also going to be sharing the links that Abby has shared in the chat box, in the emails that will be going on in our outreach campaign, so that you have access to all of these links to set up virtual appointments with Ms. Abby. And of course, information about the application cost and other details that many of you students have asked. But thank you so much, Abby. I really appreciate your kind time. I'm sure the students appreciate your kind time as well. And we know it's early in the morning, and thank you so much for hosting this session.
Yes, thank you so much. I had so much fun.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to hear that. Students, 12th grade students, parents, and counselors, thank you once again for joining in and for making this session such a success, and for your immense level of engagement. I really enjoyed learning from many of the questions you had, and also from the presentation that Abby had. I'm going to be online for the next 5 minutes, just so that if many of you want to take down these links and the other contact details that Ms. Abby has shared, you can keep it and note it down in your notepads. But thank you so much, because we know it's very late in the evening here too. And Abby, I wish you a wonderful day, all the best of success, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you. Please take care, stay safe, and thank you again.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye. See you, students. Bye-bye.